The Rotary succession plan is unique. Every year when a president starts his term, there's always a president-elect in the club board. So you already know who the next president is. How does this help the organization? And what can we learn from this structure?
I was inducted president of my club in 2009. Before then, about 2-3 years before then, I was on the succession line. I knew I was going to be president. One of the things, without meaning to sound big-headed, I do very well. I'm a planner. I knew that in 2-3 years I was going to be president of the club. I had sat down 3 years before to align my projects that I wanted to achieve during my year. I had used my advertising background to solicit money from donors to help me finance the projects I was doing. I had appointed my guest speaker at my installation. I had done everything. And again, sitting by her side, we have a female president now, sitting by her side is the immediate past president, who nudges her just in case she puts one foot wrong. She says one thing that is not quite Rotary. Not far away from that person is a person who's coming over in 2 years' time, who is learning the ropes. You know? So it does help. It does help. I'm just wondering, just as you said, why we cannot apply that to all the other areas of our public life. You know, it does help. It prepares you.
You know, there's what's been called the governance gap. Those things that government is not able to do, and that gap into which companies and civil society organizations step into. It's been established that companies profit by doing good. It's called the third bottom line. But why aren't they all doing it?
A number of them are doing this before now. Today it becomes more difficult. I'll take you back to a subject you are more familiar with, which is sports. In developed countries, sports and sports activities and organizations are sponsored by private organizations. Today, you know the outcome of the Rio Olympics. It was a dismal performance. So much so that it got to a stage, the allowances had not got to them, morale waned, performances dipped, and all that. Yes, public organizations should be approached a little more. But again, you look at it. Are things made easy for them to operate? There are obnoxious government regulations which inhibit their economic productivity. So the amount of disposable income they want to set aside for charity things like this, no longer there. No longer there. And it's going to get worse by the year. No longer there. We just pray it changes. No longer there. And government can't fund this. Can't fund this. It's a shame.
What gives you the most concern about Nigeria of today?
My most concern is the insincerity of man to man. We are not sincere. The spirit of patriotism, which other countries have, other nations have, we don't have it. Somebody used to say to me, who wants to die for Nigeria? Will you want to die for this country? Or let me ask you, or let me put it the other way, is this country worth dying for? So the entire orientation has to be done all over again. We have to rebrand the country. We have to inculcate in the average Nigerian that Nigeria comes first. I mean, you and I travel abroad every time. You go to certain parts of the U.S., in front of every house, there is the national flag of the U.S. In every house, most houses I go to, in some states. They go beyond that. You know, they flag the national flag on every car that they have. So it all starts from there. Patriotism, the love for the country. If you don't love your fellow man, how do you love your country? You see the amount of, because again, it brings me back to religion. We have all gone further and further away from our Maker. We are so intoxicated with money and wealth that we think we created ourselves. When a Nigerian has in his bank account much more money than the whole country in Africa has, another country in Africa has, why does he need to go to church? He created himself. Why shouldn't he be afraid to die? So there are problems here.
It is said that war begins in the heart of men. How can we promote peace through education?
That's a very interesting question. Education is key. I will come back to that later. Education is key. And I don't think we're doing enough in that sector. This is where, for instance, because of my background in broadcasting, several years ago, a large segment of every radio and television station was devoted to educational broadcasting. On radio, we had schools broadcasting. On television, we had educational broadcasting. Where are they now? Because the stations have, they're looking for, okay, if you have educational broadcasting, who wants to sponsor that? Maybe the publishers, not many. But rather spend more time in going to cover a social event and all that, and get a sponsor to do that. So education is still very, 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 very key. And I'm not so sure that we are getting it right in that sector yet. We are not. Standards are falling. And of course, the flip side of this is that God has been so grateful. We're in a country that is endowed with abundant human resources, brains, talents. There are much more of our brains outside this country than here. Where are they? When you think about the brain drain. So we must get back to basics on this.
You talked about broadcasting now. You were one of the first presenters on WNTV, WNBS, and you spent many years as a broadcaster. Give us your verdict on broadcasting standards today.
Good question. I always say to people that I and my other colleagues in the 50s, we were stars in the dark ages of broadcasting. Today it's a different world. And some people say, oh, Bruce, when you were there, you did better. No. The boys and girls that I see are doing extremely well. Standards have been very high. And our young boys and girls are extremely ingenious and creative. I mean, there are still areas of imperfection. Again, I will come to that because we have to step up our training programs for radio and TV broadcasters and all, and all that. But overall, standards have not fallen. If anything, they've gone very high.